All right, guys, you know what time of week it is. It's time to break down the Week 11 slate of games for the NFL. We get to talk about our favorite thing in fantasy football this week, the weather. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but we have one game that's going to be severely impacted by weather, so we're going to discuss that and talk about a lot of other games getting ready for this kind of final stretch run. We have, for most leagues, 4 games until the playoffs. So as always, let's buckle down. Let's get through this fantasy season. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you on the other side of this intro. Welcome back into TwinTakes Fantasy Football. Today we are breaking down the Week 11 slate of games. We have, as always, the matchup that I'm looking forward to, the quick hits and best of the rest, and a very, very important game of the week that we want to highlight here today that's important for not only the real-life NFL, but also for fantasy. It has a ton of fantasy stars involved. So with that being said, let's jump into it. The first matchup that I'm looking forward to is going to be the Sunday night matchup, Chiefs at Chargers, where Kansas City is currently favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is sitting at a week high of 50, which leaves our projections for Kansas City at 28.5 points and the Los Angeles Chargers projections at 22 points. Both very, very juicy totals that we can take advantage of here. And I know it's been very disappointing in the AFC West division. This is a division that a lot of fantasy analysts, including myself, projected was going to be an arms race throughout the offseason and the preseason, and it's just fallen flat. There's been no offensive explosion. We have one of the worst teams in the NFL, the Las Vegas Raiders. Russ has not been the upgrade for the Broncos. Their offense is absolutely abysmal, and it's just been a whole letdown across the entire board. Also, we can talk about the Chargers' injuries ad nauseum. However, this is a matchup that historically has always been close, and Herbert and Mahomes always tend to put in a good show in recent history between Chargers and Chiefs. So maybe this is a matchup that can kind of recapture some of that hope of that arms race, that gleam of an offensive explosion that we really had anticipated between these two teams prior to the preseason. So, despite that, I still believe that you're yelling, hey, dude, what about the injuries? Yes, I'm going to address the injuries. There's so many injuries to talk about, but I still think just because these are two generational quarterbacks between Herbert and Mahomes, they should still be able to command both offenses to high scoring totals and again make for a very exciting Sunday night football game. But again, got to talk about the injuries. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, they're both listed as questionable. They are back at practice this week, and they are both, per Coach Brandon Staley, as 50-50 to play the game this week. This weekend, Keenan Allen, he gets the award of roster clogger of the year. Like, he's been so nagged by this hamstring injury. I don't know how well, and he said he's not going to go back to his 100%. We don't know if he will be 100%, but we'll see a better prediction through today and tomorrow through practice and see how those reports comes out to see if he'll play. Mike Williams, Brandon Staley said he could play, but with his high ankle sprain, it's an injury that typically takes 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. As of this moment right now, it is exactly 4 weeks from the onset of that initial ankle injury, so still very early on in that process for him to come back. My money, if I was a betting man, I would say he does not play Sunday night. On the other side, we have Juju Smith-Schuster, who got knocked out with a nasty concussion. With the new implemented concussion protocols, I don't believe Juju will make his return in time for this game, and obviously Mecole Hardman was out last week with that abdominal ailment, is what they're calling it. And an ailment doesn't sound like it's going to be fixed anytime soon and not ready for him to play on Sunday night. So a lot of questions surrounding those receivers, and that makes picking wide receivers very challenging for this game, but we're going to be breaking it down all in our must-start section. We do have some juicy wide receivers that we will be targeting and insisting and begging you that you put in your lineup. Not only begging you, but I will put in my lineup as well. Again, we take our own advice here. I will be doing the same things that I'm telling you guys to do. We're all in this together. Talked about that these quarterbacks are generational talents. They should be started. They both are playing against pretty horrible defenses to the quarterback position. Chargers are 16th in fantasy points given up to the quarterback position, but that's kind of skewed just because their defense is ranked 30th in fantasy points given to the running back position. So normally teams run on them. As we saw last week, the Chiefs' running back room is pretty obliterated, and they don't really know what they're doing. So I expect the bump for Patrick Mahomes and passing offense to go up just because there's not going to be taking advantage of that future run defense as much as other teams have. So again, 16th in fantasy points given up is a little bit misleading. It's a little bit worse than that if they're not going to take advantage of the run game. On the other side, Kansas City is 29th in fantasy points given up to the quarterback, and it looks like Justin Herbert is finally back fully 100% from that rib cartilage injury. And then finally, let's talk about running backs here. From the Chargers, we don't need to talk about it. It's Austin Eckler, man. He's really, really good at football. And then, but the Chiefs is where it gets really iffy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now honestly a droppable candidate. I don't know what's going on. Something happened over the bye or in the past few weeks where he's just not getting targets anymore. Last week, he was only on the field for 6% of snaps and got 0 touches. He was outsnapped by both Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. I guess that's the future of this team. Really weird for a guy with first-round draft capital, but he looks to be completely uninvolved in this offense going forward. So let's, again, get into our must-starts here and how we break down our starting tiers. And we're going to make the assumption here, what I said earlier, that Juju, Mecole, Hardman, Gerald Everett, and with that groin injury, and Mike Williams are all going to miss time. We're going to assume that Keenan Allen does play in this game, but even if he is healthy, he will be playing on very, very limited snaps and on a very strict snap count. As we've seen, whenever he comes back from injury, he is always quite limited. So this leaves our must-start tier of Austin Eckler, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Kadarius Toney. This dude absolutely was toying with defenders last week. He's easily becoming Patrick Mahomes' favorite target in this offense, and I am starting Kadarius Toney in basically all of my leagues. That's how much confidence I have in him this week. And Josh Palmer, again, will be shouldering the workload for the passing offense for the Chargers. In the probably start category, you have DeAndre Carter, you have Isaiah Pacheco, you have Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and this is where I will put Keenan Allen, again, if healthy. Still, even if he says he's a full 100% go, he's going to be very limited on a snap count. So I would prefer to watch what he does on my bench. But if you are in desperation mode, you can definitely play him in there. Hopefully, he is 100% like he says he is. And then from the desperation start, we saw Jerick McKinnon heavily involved in the passing offense of the Kansas City Chiefs last week, and he was getting a pretty decent snap share in conjunction with Isaiah Pacheco. So, if you really need a running back, Jerick McKinnon is a guy you can turn to. So, next game that we want to talk about here, Lions at the Giants. New York Giants are currently favored in this game by 3 points. Little disrespect on that name from Vegas there, but the over-under set at 46, giving Detroit a projected point total of 21.5, and the Giants projected point total of 24.5. Now, this is a matchup that I have the potential to think, there's some higher point total matchups, but I think this one has the potential to be a very sneaky good matchups. The Giants currently sit at an unbelievable 7-2 record, and the Lions are currently riding a 2-game winning streak. So stock up on both of these teams right now. They're both feeling themselves. They're both feeling really good. So should be a lot of good mojo coming into this game. Lions obviously frequent this list of matchups I'm looking forward to just because they're just so good for fantasy. How many times have we have to say on this podcast or show, whatever you want to call it, dynamic offensive weapons leading to high offensive output, and a terrible bottom 3 defense just leads to fantasy goodness all around. And that's what the Lions are. And again, this is an offense that their best playmaker may not be even on the field. I am very, very excited to see what happens when Jameson Williams makes his return to this offense, as he was, before his injury, one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in this draft class. And yes, I understand DeAndre Swift has been one of the biggest disappointments for fantasy this year, and being stuck with that injury-prone label. I don't know. He says he's not 100%. Doesn't know if he's going to be 100% for the rest of the season. But he continues to have a nose for the end zone. He continues to get those touchdown upside points. And with TJ Hawkinson being shipped out of Detroit, he does have that bump in the passing game where he's been so effective and so highly utilized for fantasy. Also, I just want to say I am loving what's going on with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know I was fading him a little bit going into this season, but I mean, I'll admit it, I was super wrong on that take. He is a fantastic wide receiver, is going to be a dominant wide receiver for years to come. We're seeing him recapture some of that glory now that he dealt with injuries, but now he's back to 100% health. He's recaptured some of that glory that we saw in week 2 explosion, and then we saw in that fantasy playoff stretch run last year. And so hopefully he's primed to do that again for this year. But he had a great fantasy showing last week against the Bears, and I'm hoping that he can keep that up because he is a very, very fun player to watch. On the Giants side, the Lions have the 27th worst ranked run defense. So Saquon, smash. Throw him in your lineup every single week. He's not going to sit for any matchup, but this one he just has a upside to be a top 5 scoring fantasy asset. So he could single-handedly win you a week. Also, you have Daniel Jones, who's a good quarterback for fantasy. He's not going to win you a week. He's not a Tua, not a Justin Fields, not a Lamar type of player, but he is consistent for fantasy and he can hold down the fort. Especially prevalent this week because both the Seahawks and the Dolphins are on bye. And if you've been relying on the 7th overall quarterback in fantasy points, Geno Smith, or maybe the 4th overall quarterback in fantasy points in to Tagovailoa, you probably got both those guys off the waivers after week 1 or week 2. So if you're looking at streaming quarterbacks and your streaming quarterback is now on bye, Daniel Jones is an excellent streaming candidate going forward. And listen, we have to take the L. We here at TwinTakes completely whiffed on the Wan'Dale Robinson breakout last week, and we are very, very sad, and we apologize greatly. That gut check turned into a gut punch. I think we got some clarity on who the wide receiver 1 is, though. Obviously, it's going to be Slayton, so, at least we can have the solace that we have clarity on the wide receiver 1 position. Just move forward, and maybe we can just drop Wan'Dale and kind of get rid of that rigmarole conversation that we had about him being the wide receiver 1 in this offense. So here we go. Must start territory. DeAndre Swift. Yes, keep starting DeAndre Swift. He will be good in your line. He's not going to win you a game, but he's going to be one of the top 24 running backs. Jamal Williams with the touchdown upside. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Darius Slayton, especially against this Detroit defense. In the probably start category, Jared Goff, we've seen him go off for insane fantasy weeks. We've seen him go into 30 points when he's faced up with a really, really good matchup, and he has the ability to do so here with all these weapons. And then in desperation, you can start Wan'Dale. We'll give him a little desperation nod here. Good on you, Wan'Dale. Third game, let's talk about it. Bears at Falcons. Currently, Falcons are favored by 3 points. A little disrespect in the name of the Bears here. Over-under is also at 50 points, just like the first matchup we talked about, which leaves Chicago with a projected point total of 23.5 points, and Atlanta's projected at 26.5 points. I don't know how they're going to reach that when they only run the ball and never throw the ball to Drake London or Kyle Pitts, but I digress. Vegas knows a lot more than I do. So right now, got to highlight this because all eyes are on Justin Fields right now. 2 back-to-back 40-point weeks for the young stud QB, and has elevated him to a whole new stratosphere in terms of fantasy relevance. He has the hot hand and is seemingly getting better week after week. And again, last week, I'm not going to go into it, we talked ad nauseum about how Eberflus changed his coaching style, completely revamped the offense to really suit Justin Fields' needs and make sure he has an offense designed playing into his strengths as a runner, and how Fields has matured throughout the season, not only in the way that he passes the ball and making better passes, but in the way he processes in the pocket and making smarter passes and smarter decisions. But again, I want to say now, this week, the impressive thing is that he's been doing this consistently. He's put tape out there. Now the teams have footage of him to study. He's done this consistently. People are expecting him to go off. They're not going to be caught off guard by his athleticism anymore, and he's still getting it done. Teams know that they're going to torch him on the ground, but they still cannot prevent it. And Atlanta is a bottom 10 defense that is very, very susceptible to the run game. And just to show you, just like with Kadarius Toney, just to show you how much confidence I have in Justin Fields this week, I am starting him over Lamar Jackson in my main redraft league. Yes, you heard that correctly. I drafted Lamar in the 4th round. He's been good to me. But I played Justin Fields last week on the bye. I should have played him the week before that, and I'm going to be playing him this week against Atlanta over Lamar. So I apologize to Ravens fans, but Justin Fields has a hot hand, and that's what I'm going with. Going on with Khalil Herbert going to IR, David Montgomery should kind of break out of the lull that he's had in the run game, step into a larger role. Obviously, he's been on the field for most percentage of snaps, but again, that running back or that goal line work had gone to Khalil Herbert, so that will again find his way back into David Montgomery's hands, avoiding injury. And then also just the threat of Fields running has really opened up the passing lanes for both Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. We've seen their fantasy relevance just explode in past weeks as Justin Fields has been dragging them to fantasy relevance along with his elite and meteoric rise to fantasy stardom. On the other side of the ball, the Bears are 28th in points given to the RB position, so Cordero Patterson should bounce back from his 25-point performance last week. Again, last week was also played in a monsoon down there in Carolina, so anything that happened in the game, I am throwing it out. And I know I really hit on this when we started this matchup, but just the Bears, Justin Fields, they're very offensively explosive. They're going to put up a lot of points. And you know how you keep up with that? You throw the damn ball, Arthur Smith. You throw the damn ball. You have 2 top 10 pass catchers that you spent, 2 top 10 draft capital pass catchers from the past 2 drafts. Use them. They are good. Throw the ball. For the love of God. I was so high on Drake London, and it pains my soul every time I watch a Falcons game. But again, let's go into our starting tiers. So must start, we have Fields, Monty, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney. Most Bears I'm putting in the must start in a long time. Cordero Patterson does make his bounce back here. Marcus Mariota and Kyle Pitts. Yes, you heard me. advocating for Kyle Pitts after he's been a mainstay on our dubs list this entire season. In the probably start section, I am putting Drake London. I do think Kyle Pitts will be more of a target in the passing game than Drake London, so Drake London should be a break glass in case of emergency situation. And then desperation start, we can go to some of these backup skill position players like a Chase Claypool or a Tyler Algier. Again, I do expect this to be a very high scoring game with fantasy points all around. So those are the matchups that we really want to highlight this week. Now let's jump into our quick hits and best of the rest. And we will start with the game tonight. Titans at Packers, where Green Bay is favored by 3 points. And this is going to be a fun Thursday night game. I haven't had a fun Thursday night game in a while. And maybe slight stock down on Aaron Jones as he faces the Titans, who are number 2 in points given up to the running back position. They're very stout against the run. So his great back-to-back performances might be a little stymied this week if you've been relying on him in the past couple of weeks. But the main thing that I want to watch in this matchup is Christian Watson. Can he continue? This is the Titans' passing defense. That is 30th in fantasy points given to the wide receiver position. So if there's any chance that Christian Watson can sustain that production that he had last week against the Cowboys, this is the perfect matchup for him to go out and show us that he is legit. He is the real deal. He's going to be breakout just the way Justin Jefferson did a couple years ago, just the way Jamar Chase did a couple years ago as well. Again, I'm not totally sold on his production. Again, I talked ad nauseum here how when you have a tremendous amount of production on a very few receptions, like Christian Watson only had 4 receptions last week, turned that into 30 fantasy points, that is not sustainable on that few targets and that few receptions. So I want to see how more involved he can get in this offense, if he can truly become that deep threat, and if he's going to become fantasy relevant for the rest of the season and step up as Aaron Rodgers number 1. That was a lot to talk about Christian Watson. And then obviously you got to play Derrick Henry. He's a top 5 upside on the week as a running back against the 24th ranked run defense of the Packers. Derrick Henry's just really good at football. Next one is going to be Eagles at Colts, where Philadelphia's favored by 6.5 points. It's not going to be a cakewalk for the Colts like it was against the Raiders. I still like Taylor in this matchup, as the Eagles are giving up the highest EPA per play to the running back position. But I would turn elsewhere for Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell was good last week, but again, this Eagles secondary, I think they're going to be looking for vengeance, going to be hunting heads after the upset last week by the Commanders. I would pivot elsewhere for wide receivers. For the Eagles, you do need to monitor the health of A.J. Brown. He left for a little bit of time with a knee injury. He could be pretty shaken up, and he is on the injury list as of right now. And it could be a game-time decision, but with Goddard going down and going on IR, it only boosts the stock of Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and Miles Sanders. So all healthy Eagles are a go against, again, I think I'm putting it nicely when I say this joke of a roster for the Colts. Next is Browns at Bills. And I had such a nice little blurb written right here, guys. Like, I wish you could see my notes. I had such a great thing typed up about how Devin Singletary is going to go off in the run after he had 2 touchdowns last week and all this other stuff. But no, this game is expected to have 31 inches of snow, and they don't have a dome up there in Buffalo. Not like it would even mattered. No one will be able to get the game in 31 inches of snow. So this game might not even happen. We'll keep you guys monitored. Hopefully the apps will update you on how to address games that are delayed, because there are a lot of fantasy relevant assets here. Gabe Davis, Devin Singletary, Nick Chubb, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen. There's a lot of guys at stake here for fantasy matchups. So again, I don't even know if this game is going to happen at this point. If it does, Nick Chubb to the moon, no one else. God, I cannot even imagine trying to pass the ball in this game, but I most likely think it's going to be delayed. Keep on updates for an eye on Twitter, keep an eye on ESPN, keep an eye on Sleeper, all those fun guys, and they'll keep you updated on how to adjust fantasy scores and schedules accordingly to get you guys all squared away on this matchup. But can't really talk about much other than the weather. It's going to be 31 inches of snow, and it's going to absolutely destroy this game. Moving on, we have Jets at the Patriots. This is our weekly running back game of the week. We're bringing it back after it wasn't here last week. Running back game of the week where we only play running backs and Michael Carter, James Robinson, and Ramondre Stevenson. But what is that? TwinTakes. What about Garrett Wilson? Okay, guys, let's settle down here. Zach Wilson has not been given the keys to the car yet of this Jets offense. Robert Saleh does not trust him with the ball. The split between run and pass games are wildly in favor of the run game. It's why they went out and traded for J-Rob. They don't really trust Zach Wilson to throw the ball, and Garrett Wilson had his best fantasy game when Joe Flacco was under center. I'm not quite ready to trust Garrett Wilson in this very, very small passing pie that's being orchestrated by Zach Wilson. All right, next, Panthers at Ravens. Baltimore favored by 12 points here. I'm going to heavily fade Lamar, though, here. Another reason why I'm sitting him in favor of Justin Fields. Without Bateman and Andrews, we saw Lamar's production drop heavily. Yeah, he's a dynamic quarterback, but that's only when the passing game is working and opening up those running lanes. The lack of a passing game is incredibly concerning as Harbaugh and the Ravens brass up there really leans into the run game to control games without those downfield weapons. And we know Bateman will be out for the rest of the year. Hopefully, Mark Andrews is healthy. So if we look at the snap split in the last two games without Andrews and Bateman, it's been 2-1 in favor of run plays over pass plays. We're looking at Gus Edwards to the moon here, and obviously Lamar will get involved in the ground, but the touchdown upside, the passing volume is just not going to be there and really hinders his upside as a fantasy QB this week. Commanders at Texans. It's going to be our second running back game of the week Commanders at Texans, Washington favored by 3 points. Second running back game of the week. We have two to make up for last week, two running back games of the week where we only play the running backs. Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, and Damian Pierce. Not Eno Benjamin. Too soon to play him in this matchup. But what about Terry McLaurin? He just came off a amazing game, and you highlighted him in your Week 10 recap and spoke wonders about how talented he was. Yes, I understand that, but listen, the Texans are dead last in fantasy points given to the running back position. They are 32nd. They are the worst run defense in the NFL. And when you can run the ball to death against the Texans, why on earth would you ever put the ball in Heineke's hands when you don't have to? Enough said. Raiders at Broncos. Denver's currently favored by 2.5. I really don't care about this game. We're going to highlight it anyway. It's going to be a rough game for both sides here. Honestly, I would anticipate this game to hit the under. And if I'm betting man, I'm teasing this game on the under. I wouldn't try to get cute here. Obviously, with the Jerry Jeudy injury, you can play the starting running back in Melvin Gordon and Courtland Sutton as a starting wide receiver. Again, against this against this Raiders defense that's pretty bad. And then on the other side, Adams and Jacobs, they're going to get kind of stymied a little bit by this Denver defense that is a top 5 defense. But again, because of their just star-studded status, you have to play them. Surtain versus Adams should be very interesting, not for fantasy because I think it's going to result badly for Adams' production, but for real-life NFL, just watching the game, that's what I'd be paying attention to most. And the Raiders are 32nd against QBs and 32nd in points given up to the QB position, so stream Russell Wilson at your own risk, but I've given you plenty of other options. Bengals at Steelers. I'm not going to highlight this here. I am covering a lot of the players in this game for Sleeper this week. That was one of my assigned games. So we're talking about like T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Najee, Pickens, Deontay Johnson, all those fun guys are going to be over on Sleeper. So make your way over to Sleeper HQ over on YouTube or go to your Sleeper app on your phone or tablet, go over to the video section and check out those videos there for those specific player analysis. We're breaking it down player by player, much more analysis than I would have done for this section right here. So I'm just going to plug Sleeper. And the last one in this quick hits best of the rest section is going to be 49ers at Cardinals, where San Francisco is currently favored by 8 points. Losing Ertz is obviously a massive blow for the Cardinals, as I don't expect Trey McBride to step up and make any strides in this offense, and he was heavily involved in every game so far. I just had commanding a monster target share in this offense and really performing really well since he came over in that trade from the Eagles 2 years ago. Also, they're going up against an insane defense in the 49ers. They are ranked number 1 against running backs to the dismay of James Conner's owners. I know a lot of James Conner owners were very happy last week. He came back, had to put up 22.5 points in half PPR scoring. But again, I would not expect anywhere close to that upside this week. And in order for the Cardinals to keep up with the 49ers, Murray will need to throw the ball. The receivers are going to be heavily involved in order to actually put up any sort of points or production from the Cardinals side. So I do have a ton of confidence in Rondale and DeAndre Hopkins this week. I know it might be scary looking at them as wide receiver options against the San Francisco defense, but I give you full confidence to start them. On the other side, for the 49ers, I continue to watch the snap shares of how this all plays out. Last week's losers were Debo and Kittle, just because they really did not pass the ball that much and just ran. Just way too many mouths to feed in this offense. Same thing with the Eagles, where we always say there's always going to be one loser every week that's not going to get a ton of fantasy production. It's going to be disappointing for fantasy, but you don't know which one it is. But I think we could predict this week with the Cardinals being 22nd ranked against the run, and obviously 22nd in fantasy points coming up to their running back position. It's very concerning for pass catchers here. I mean, you have CMC, Elijah Mitchell, and Deebo Samuel lining up in the backfield. Why would you ever trust the ball in Jimmy G's hands when you could just run it down the Cardinals' throats? All right. That's going to wrap up our quick hits best of the rest section. I hope you enjoyed that. So now we can get on to our matchup of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Matchup of the week. And two teams I'm not particularly fond of, but they're really good in the NFL this year. and going to be Cowboys at Vikings, where Dallas. It's basically a pick 'em. The spread is Dallas -1 at this point, but it's basically a pick 'em. They're pretty evenly matched. Over/under set at 47.5 points. Dallas is projected at 24.5 points, and Minnesota is projected at 23.5 points. And it's exciting, like I said, for both the NFL and for fantasy. These are two of the top 5 teams in the NFC right now, and this game is going to have massive implications on playoff seeding down the line. Again, I could see tiebreakers for moving into second. I don't think they're either going to catch the Eagles at this point, but again, jockeying for not home games, but obviously who gets to play the worst record or the worst team, the 6th or 7th team. This could definitely be a major factor in that. It's a very hard-fought game for both teams that are going to bring their A game in an absolute statement game. Again, two very star-studded and dynamic offenses for hoping for a fireworks shootout up there in Minnesota this weekend. I know that they have pretty decent defenses. They have stars on both sides: Micah Parsons, Tank Lawrence for the Cowboys. And then Zavarius Smith is on an absolute tear for the Vikings. So these are not any shams of defenses by any means, but again, these are offenses that I hope can overcome the defensive prowess here. But again, this is not a knock on either of their defenses. This is just me wanting to see a good offensive game and seeing a lot of fantasy points results from it. Kirk Cousins is coming off a monster upset win at the Bills, and having one of the best statistical seasons of his career. He looks completely rejuvenated under this Kevin O'Connell offense that's really switching to the air raid offense and is no longer kind of a laughingstock of the QB. They also have a top 5 running back and wide receiver duo in Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson respectively, and they both put on a show versus the Bills. Cook with an 81-yard rush TD to spark that comeback in the fourth quarter, and obviously Justin Jefferson having an all-time catch on 4th and 18. Just you knew what I was going to say before I even had to say it. And they have now solidified themselves in my mind as title contenders, not just playoff contenders, title contenders. So interesting to see how they play out the rest of this season if they continue to go on the upward trend. On the other side of the ball, the Cowboys have had their injury struggles, but the team has really stepped up. Again, next man up mentality, and they have had one of their better seasons in recent years, in my opinion. CeeDee Lamb is coming off his best game of his young career and has finally taken the step into that alpha wide receiver role that everyone, including myself, was hoping he would do for the past 2 seasons or so. Dak looks great, and he's comfortable in the offense, and Zeke and Tony Pollard are one of the most dynamic running back duos in the NFL. So another thing I want to talk about here, Dalton Schultz, a guy that a lot of people forgot about at the start of the season due to his injury and due to Dak's injury as well, but because the Cowboys failed to make a trade for another pass catcher in Brandon Cooks at the deadline and Michael Gallup's injuries and his struggles, I expect Dalton Schultz to be very, very involved down the stretch run of the 2022 NFL season for them. So now we get into our tiers, as always, and let's start with our must-start. It's going to be Kirk Cousins. Yep, I'm starting Kirk Cousins. I think he will be a top 12 quarterback on this week. Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Zeke, Tony Pollard. Yeah, he's a must-start this week. After the past 2 weeks of what he's done and what he's proven in this offense, he's a must-start. Finally, Dalton Schultz. Probably start tier. You get TJ Hawkinson and Adam Thielen, and there's going to be no desperation starts. I'm just trying to. Most of the assets in this game should find the way into your starting lineup. So, all right. Now that we've finished up that, let's highlight our sleeper players. Again, if you want in-depth analysis going into their exact fantasy location, more stats, deep dives, looking at pro football reference, these are the guys I'm talking about for Sleeper this week. Go head over to Sleeper HQ on YouTube or go into your Sleeper app and go to the video section, and you can find them starting today. Again, just look for my beautiful face. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, Gus Edwards, Kadarius Toney, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, Brandon Ayuk, Rondale Moore, and Mike Williams will all be discussed at length by myself on YouTube and on the Sleeper app. So go check those out. Throw a like, throw a comment. It would mean the world to me as we continue to pump up this Sleeper production, and I will see you in a second for my parting thoughts.
You know, there's only one thing that I'm not clear about.
Actually, there is one thing.
What other thing?
Some of my parting thoughts here, kind of meh. Some of them are actually really profound. I think this one leans towards the more profound side. And this, again, we have 4 weeks left in the regular season for fantasy for your typical fantasy season. So this is where I want you to think about starting to stash for the playoffs. Look at guys that have good fantasy schedules. If you take stock of your team, are you still fighting for a playoff spot? Have you already locked up your playoff spot? And you can start, planning for the future. And if you can, stash for the playoffs. You need to take a holistic look at your team now and in the future, because you can't just get to week 14, week 15, and then just be like, oh, well, I have just the worst matchups in the world and I'm never going to be able to make it through the playoffs. But you're here to win. So guys that I want to highlight here, like Elijah Mitchell, obviously the owner's probably pretty disenfranchised with him after CMC was added. But listen, CMC is a huge injury risk, and Elijah Mitchell has an amazing playoff schedule. And again, this is also a team that loves to run the ball. J.K. Dobbins, he's still on IR. He won't be back for another 3 weeks. His first week back is going to be week 13. So again, a guy that you can probably pick up for cheap in a trade, a guy that might even have been dropped to waivers if the manager has really been that disappointed in J.K. Dobbins. But he also has a really, really good playoff schedule. So just 2 guys that, again, look forward. Try to take roster of your team. If you have extra bench spots, go stash these guys. Are going to help you win later on down the line. Fantasy is not about just being in the moment. It's about planning for the future and making these sort of predictions. So that's what's going to take to win. So as always, wishing you guys all the best of luck in week 11. I will see you on the other side to recap all the craziness that goes down. We'll see what happens with that crazy weather game up in Buffalo. And hopefully this should be another very fun, very high-scoring week of NFL football. Take care.